Starting out your Diablo 4 journey, are you going to want to play the Rogue? Cunning, agile, and resourceful, the Rogue allows you to use either bows or daggers to combat your opponents. Fire off volleys of arrows from a distance or get up close and personal and stab your opponents to death. Later in the game, you'll get some cool traps like caltrops to be able to slow down your opponents and really make them pay. The Rogue's special resource is energy. This purple ball fills up over time as you use your abilities. It fills up rather rapidly, but drains rather quickly. Your first option for a basic attack is Invigorating Strike, striking enemies dealing small amounts of damage and rapidly increasing your energy generation. Enhancing this just increases the energy generation even further. This specialization will allow you to use your secondary skill way more often. This pairs very well with Flurry, unleashing a flurry of stabs and slashes, dealing small amounts of damage per hit, but a lot of hits. Early game, you won't utilize Enhanced Flurry because you can't crowd control opponents. Gives you a decent amount of lifesteal once you're able to do that. Advanced Fury is really recommended to give you that ability to CC targets to take advantage of that Enhanced Flurry skill and get that lifesteal. This combo is very effective against elite units and groups of enemies. You just shred them. However, since you're unable to make targets vulnerable early game, bosses are very difficult. You're not able to get your lifesteal, and you're not able to CC them, so you're just reliant on the sheer damage of what Flurry can do, which isn't as high as other skills. This is definitely more of a dungeon clearer specialization, and it struggles against bosses until you yourself are able to apply that vulnerable effect. Overall, I would say the specialization is pretty darn fun. The extra uses of your skills is just very rewarding, and the skill in general is just really fun to see it play out. Your next melee option is Bladeshift, which is quickly stab your opponent and then you're able to move freely through enemies. This skill on its own is not very powerful, and enhancing it just increases your movement speed after you've used the effect, allowing you to position better, but still not increasing its effectiveness. Once you unlock Twisting Blades, however, everything changes. Twisting Blades works fantastically with this skill because it has an effect and then a return effect. So if you stab your enemies with this and then move through enemies, it then returns to you through the extra enemies, doing extra damage. Enhancing this increases that return damage significantly. And then I would recommend taking Improved Twisted Blades to make sure it stuns the target when you initially hit them. This allows you to control the angle that they return to you at a lot easier. Once you unlock the Dazing skill, this is extremely effective against elite enemies, because you're able to give them that daze condition and then just unload on them with extra blades. Although the daze condition is no longer an option on boss fights, this effect is still very powerful. Those twisting blades do a lot of damage on both initial effect and on the return. If you can time them as well to the spawn of enemies, returning them to you just destroys those waves very quickly, making it not a threat to you during the fight. This is a very good boss killing specialization. For funness of this particular specialization, I would say it is challenging but fun. You have a lot of fun if you are able to do it right, but it does take a lot more work than any other specialization I've played. Your last option for daggers is Puncture. This is throwing daggers, so you get ranged, but you still scale off of your equipped dual-wield weapons. Casting this multiple times will slow your enemies. And that slow works really well with Enhanced Puncture, gaining energy when you hit a crowd-controlled enemy. I also really like taking Primary Puncture, which ensured that every critical strike, or every third time you cast Primary Puncture, it ricocheted to more enemies. This really helped this specialization clear up groups of enemies. Since there's no other ranged dual-wield specialization, we're also going to check out Barrage. This unleashes a barrage of arrows in a wide cone, and each of these arrows has a chance to ricochet. Taking Enhanced Barrage ensures that critical strikes and strikes on vulnerable targets are guaranteed to do that ricochet effect. This is probably the worst skill that I've tried to use for the rogue character. It really struggled trying to take out priority targets. It could get locked up because the wide range of the AoE attack couldn't really kill targets from a distance, and there wasn't any good way for you to get up close and personal. It was kind of ironic that the Barrage skill was most useful if you were right up in somebody's face and you could unload fully into them, rather than what the intention of Barrage-like skills are, which is to take out groups of enemies. It was not nearly as effective at. To do that, however, the boss fight ended up being rather easy because of the sheer amount of damage that you could do with a up-close Barrage. Compared to any other attack, Barrage right in melee range, especially if it critically striked, absolutely chunked bosses. This didn't feel right, it didn't feel good for how the skill feels like it should play out, but it definitely worked. And so if you like to be able to absolutely shred bosses, Barrage was a beast at that, especially if you build a critical strike style build. For me, funness level of this was really low. I did not really enjoy the throw playstyle. It didn't feel as good as any of the other dagger styles, and Barrage was just a bit of a letdown. Our first bow option is Heartseeker. This fires an arrow that seeks out enemies, dealing damage, increasing your critical strike chance against them by 3% for 4 seconds. The enhanced version plays into that, giving you attack speed whenever you critically strike. I found it was most beneficial to combine this with primary Heartseeker, giving you ricochet effects to additional targets. When your normal skill can hit multiple targets, you're much better at clearing up those waves of enemies. I paired this with Rapidfire. Just shooting rapidly 5 arrows at one target was very rewarding. Enhanced Rapidfire increases your critical strike chance per arrow all the way up to 25%. That was really great, just more crits from this effect just makes it a lot better. If you can find a way to make the target vulnerable, improved Rapidfire really ups the usefulness of this spec, as you get a lot of energy from hitting vulnerable targets, and then you're able to just keep busting out those Rapidfires. This specialization was able to do everything you needed it to do throughout the dungeon. It could clear out packs, it could take out priority targets, it could eliminate elites rather quickly. It was just a very solid spec. On the boss, it continued to just be super reliable. Rapidfire did a bunch of damage, chunking the boss down rather quickly. The Heartseeker was really good for both doing regular damage to the boss with the ricochet effect, as well as taking out the ads that were spawned. This spec just continues to work really well and feels like a cohesive character. The character specializes in those trick arrow shots, and it just felt really, really good. This is probably the most fun rogue spec to play. Your other option for bow is Forceful Arrow, which hits enemies for a decent amount of damage, and every third cast makes them vulnerable. Enhancing this makes that third cast also have increased critical strike chance, which just feels fantastic. And I was a really big fan of taking the fundamental Forceful Arrow, which knocks back enemies that are close by. This was really rewarding in gameplay. To pair with this, I took Penetrating Shot, which shoots through multiple enemies, dealing a huge amount of damage. Enhancing this makes sure that as it pierces through more targets, it does more and more damage, allowing you to take out those far back priority targets really easily. Finally, taking the improved Penetrating Shot makes sure that when you are clearing out a brand new room, you're able to shoot one shot and then a secondary shot that has huge critical strike chance, great for clearing out rooms. Overall, this spec felt pretty good. I liked the Forceful Arrow effect and the Penetrating effect working together. Pushing back enemies and then hitting them with a Penetrating Shot worked really well and felt like a really cohesive character, so I really like this. I'm all about those cohesion effects, so any character that feels really smooth is going to really have higher points for me than one that feels a little bit more clunky. When you get used to the Forceful Arrow pushing back enemies, and then elites not getting pushed back can feel a little bit rough, but the spec still handles them rather quickly, and that Penetrating Arrow just does so much damage. When coming to a boss, the Forceful Arrow effect was just so good. Stacking vulnerable on the enemy with 3 shots, and then having that increased critical strike chance, the boss's health went away very quickly and very reliably. I felt like I could do what I needed to do, and then my Forceful Arrow blocking back enemies, and then Penetrating Shot taking them out quickly was just really easy to handle this particular boss. And I'm sure it'll be really great on other bosses as well. Overall, just a fantastic build that worked really well and was quite a bit of fun to play. I could easily see the spec getting better and better as you level up. So rogues aren't really my jam. The speedy character that puts down traps isn't really my style, and I'm much more of a summon allies, using necromancy, using warlocks. Powerful incarnate magic kind of deal is really my jam. But a lot of people love the speedy, quick, arrow shooting, Legolas style, or the rogue, sneaky, sleuthing style kind of character, and this guy is definitely that. It feels pretty good, it's fast, it's quick, you get a lot of skill usages with how the energy bar fills up, and overall it's just a fantastically cohesive character that doesn't feel like any one specialization is that far behind any of the others or that far ahead. Just really great character, lots of fun. I really hope this guide helped you figure out if you're going to enjoy the rogue in Diablo 4. Join us next time for talking a little bit about the Barbarian, a master of weapons and rage.